Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Claire and today we are diving into Japanese skincare. I am so excited. First of all, my usual disclaimer, I don't have any makeup on my face. This is just kind of how my bare skin currently looks at the moment. But I'm so excited about Japanese skincare because Japanese skincare has honestly just taught me so much about skincare in general. And I say that because I always feel like Asian skincare are just so innovative in general. Korean skincare is so innovative and I find Japanese skincare is very innovative, but in their own way. When I first started kind of diving into Asian skincare, I feel like I kind of like started with Korean skincare because that was kind of like what I saw the most of. And then I really wanted to start trying out some Japanese skincare. So I was doing a lot of research, trying to find what are the commonly, most commonly loved products. And the further that I dived into Japanese skincare, the further that I realized they have just such a different philosophy and approach to skincare than in Korean skincare. And actually through that, I just feel like I learned so much. So without any further ado, let's just dive in. So first things first, Japanese skincare and Korean skincare have a very common foundation in hydration. And when I mean hydration, I just mean like just focusing on having that glowy skin. You don't really see, for example, too many products that's focused on like anti-aging. You don't see like a lot of hype, for example, around like, oh my gosh, let's use this retinol, that retinol. A lot of it is really meant for hydration. And the reason for that is because actually, as I've recently found out, it was super fascinating. Scientific studies have actually shown that an East Asian skin in general have a thinner skin barrier. And basically what that means is that our skin barrier is the most outside layer of our skin, and then the second layer is the dermis, and then on it goes. And so the outside layer, our skin barrier, is kind of responsible essentially for keeping all of the hydration inside our skin. It's responsible for protecting your skin against for example, a ton of like all these like environmental pollutants and like all this stuff, you know, just kind of running around in the air. And it's also responsible for helping make sure that anything that is underneath, for example, all of like the good oils that we want to naturally have, the natural oils in our skin, are actually remaining inside our skin rather than escaping outwards. So with that being said, without considering in general, like lifestyle, environmental factors, and like all of that stuff, in general, East Asian skin actually has a thinner skin barrier. And because of that, that means that we tend to lose a lot of moisture. But that's also why, for example, you might see that a lot of us are actually a bit oilier. And so if you've ever observed any of your East Asian friends, and I say East Asian because a lot of the studies say, will generalize to Asians, but through my personal research, it seems like a lot of the participants in the actual studies are more East Asian and Southeast Asian genetically. And so I just want to put that out there because Asia is so diverse, which is so amazing. But that's kind of why when we say Asian, it's like really misleading. Like we have to be really specific, you know. So with that being said, obviously lifestyle, environmental factors have a huge part in, you know, like whether like how our skin barrier looks. And like a lot of us, I think, you know, over exfoliate, do too many rough things on our skin that we just break down our skin barrier, even if we are genetically predispositioned to not have a thinner skin barrier. For example, like my husband, he is brown, and so his skin barrier is naturally a bit thicker than mine. But for example, someone in his position, let's just say, you know, he was over exfoliating a lot and just, you know, really not taking care of his skin. Like it's very natural that even though he may genetically have a thicker skin barrier than mine, it is so reasonable that maybe some things just kind of wear down over time. But I say that kind of as a upfront because that's kind of why Asian skincare is so focused on hydration. But I think that's actually, to me, where a lot of similarities between Korean skincare and Japanese skincare actually ends. Both are still very innovative. I feel like I just need to throw that out there because like that's kind of why I got into Asian skincare, honestly, to begin with, is because like it is just so innovative. But that's kind of where it ends, because to me, Korean skincare is really focused on a lot of different ingredients that you might have in like your skincare. So for example, there is a lot of Korean serums, like such as this one. This is from Skin 1004. This is a really popular Madagascar Centella ampoule. And so this is just a ampoule is kind of basically just like a serum on steroids is the best way I can describe it. But this is basically just a serum for Centella asiatica, that ingredient. And so you will see a lot of different Korean skincare products where they're really focused on maybe, for example, like 1 or 2 different types of ingredients. For example, there's so many different amazing rice toners that I'm like so excited to try out, such as the one from Tier. I like recently just got it and I'm like, oh my gosh, like can't wait to start trying it, because like I've heard so many good things about it. But so that's kind of like something to keep in mind with Korean skincare. They're really obsessed with the different types of ingredients that you can kind of like mix and match into your skincare routine. And I actually really like that, because I feel like that was kind of how I discovered the different things that I needed in my skincare routine very specifically. I don't really struggle with redness, but I struggle a lot with hydration. And so I found that actually focusing a lot of my skincare routine on, for example, using rice to kind of help soften my skin, prep my skin, and then going in with ceramides and going in with like other ingredients that's meant for hydration actually helped my skin so much more than just kind of getting like a serum that like claims to do everything. On the flip side of it is that Japanese skincare is a lot more simplistic. And so whereas Korean skincare might emphasize the like the 10-12 step skincare routine, they have a lot of different kind of like natural ingredients. What I've actually observed in Japanese skincare is that everything is a lot more simplistic, and you will see a lot more products that maybe seem to have like a bit more chemically, but I personally do not find that to be a bad thing, because I found that so many of these products have actually just worked out so well for my skin. Something else I want to mention that's very unique to me about Japanese skincare is just that everything is meant to be so functional. And I say functional in the sense that because they are in favor of a more simplified skincare routine, like skincare routines are typically more of like closer to like 4 or 5 steps, for example. Every single product that is in your skincare routine are designed specifically to be able to do a lot for you. For example, my favorite serum of all time is and will always remain the Decorte Liposome Serum. This is very interesting. So I first got sent this serum just to try out, like at least a couple years ago, maybe I would say, but I got sent this initially just kind of like for a PR gift, just to try out initially. And then ever since then, I've like spent so much of my own personal money purchasing and repurchasing and mentioning this product over and over again, so many of my videos, because I just found that it works. And I think for the longest time, I didn't really know why it worked for me until I started really diving into the philosophy of Japanese skincare, like what are the common like products that people use, what are the common products that people like, how does that work with their lifestyle. And so what I really like about this is that this is like a great example of what I mean by like functional. This is a serum that just does everything. It helps prep your skin for everything that you're using afterwards, but it also gives you such a good amount of hydration that you might need. It also kind of helps smooth everything out, kind of gives you that really kind of like gentle, almost like anti-aging kind of a feel without actually being like an anti-aging product like a retinol. And so something like this was really kind of where I discovered, I was like, okay, this is what it means when they say that everything is just like super functional. It's just one product can really do a lot for you in your skincare routine. And I think that's actually really amazing in Japanese skincare, where it's like everything is simplified. So when you get one good product, it will just do so much for you. And I actually feel like that's amazing. If you prefer to have a simpler skincare routine, I would definitely look for some amazing Japanese skincare products where they can really just kind of, you know, like do a lot. They're really multifunctional. So, I mean, this is my favorite one. We're going to try to not linger on this too much because I've honestly talked about this so much, but I just feel like I want to throw that out there because I do find that to be very unique over Korean skincare, where there's a lot of different steps, specifically because every single product that you're using is maybe more geared towards one specific type of ingredient, and then you can mix and match to have like a lot of different ingredients that really work well for your skin. And so I don't believe that these two skincare philosophies are in I think that they can work really well together, basically, because I think everything is a balance. And so for me, I still like to have a lot of different steps in my skincare routine, but I do put them together, I think, in a way where I'm like keeping in mind kind of like the aspects of each where I really like. So in Korean skincare, I really learned to focus on the type of ingredients that I need. And I think Japanese skincare, I really found ones that are going to be a lot more functional for me. Let's get into the actual Japanese skincare routine, because this is honestly where I just learned so much. Okay, so first of all, let's just kind of preview what a typical Japanese skincare routine looks like. I'm going to roughly categorize all of the steps into 5 different areas. The first area is cleansing. So this includes your double cleansing if you want to use an oil cleanser, if you want to use something stronger, milky cleansers, cleansing waters. This is kind of like all in that step. Cleansers as number 1. You also have your variety of toners, essences, skin conditioners, which we will get into what the difference between all of these are, because that was just really confusing to me when I first got into Japanese skincare. But you kind of have basically everything that's just, you know, like super watery, as that you can kind of think of. Everything super watery, that's kind of like what the second step is. The third step is the very usual ones, like we have our serums and all of the different kinds of serums that you could possibly want and use. This is just one very amazing example in my opinion. The third one that you have is emulsions. Now emulsions is where I've talked about this a lot, but they kind of look a little bit different. You can sometimes see them categorized as different types of skin milks. Sometimes they're just advertised as emulsions. Sometimes they're advertised as a milky lotion. We will get into what emulsions does, but this is an amazing concept that I've learned from Japanese skincare that I just honestly feel like has been such a game changer. And then of course you have the usual moisturizers, like just a very typical usual moisturizer. It can be something that is a lot thicker, or it can actually be something that is a lot thinner if you prefer more something more like a gel-like consistency. Those are, to me, like roughly like the 5 main categories of Japanese skincare to keep in mind. So starting off with double cleansing, keeping in mind that in Japan it does tend to be very humid, hot, and also, you know, in the winter times it can get a little bit cold. So keeping in mind the temperature and the lifestyle of Japan and of Japanese people, for which all these skincare products are made for, we start off with cleansing, and I say it's very important because in Japanese cleansers, when I've started trying them, I've realized that some of them are just so incredibly drying on my skin. And then some of them are just so incredibly thick. And I felt a little bit like Goldilocks when I started trying them. And some of my past skincare videos, if you've been watching me on YouTube for a while, you'll kind of see that I've had ones where I'm like, oh my gosh, like if I had like really oily skin, I would love this. But because I have dry skin, I do not love this. And so there's like so many different amazing ones. For example, there's a couple ones from, I think from Curel and from Hada Labo, where they're just kind of like they are a foam cleanser, and they're amazing if you have really oily skin that you need to kind of get under control. And they also have super, super, super hydrating cleansers to the point where I'm like, this is a bit much. This is one such example. This is the Lachesca milk cleanser. This is one of like the brands from Sekkisei, which is one of like the massive skincare brands that like puts out so many different types of things in Japan. Kind of almost like an Estee Lauder of Japan. You know how like Estee Lauder owns like a million different companies? Like they have Estee Lauder, I believe Estee Lauder owns like La Mer and like all this other stuff. It's kind of like that. But for example, this one, when I started trying, because I love a good milk cleanser, it is so thick to the point where I'm just like, I'm a little confused. And so I did not know how to quite like use this. I've used, it's a little bit hard to see, but like I've used like about like this much to try to really like see if I can make this work for my skin, but it was just like almost too thick. And so I do use this on the days where maybe I have to like double cleanse my skin a lot because I have like just like a ton of makeup on for some reason. And then I go in at the end and then I just kind of like slather this on for just like so much hydration. Most regular days, this is actually a bit much for me. And so I actually, for example, really like using it on my body when my body gets really dry. But so they do have other cleansers that I found that I've really liked. This is one that I recently repurchased, which is why it's in the box. Let me open this up and show you guys. But this is something that I've recently got and or I recently repurchased because I love this so much. This is also kind of like a milky cleanser, but this is also from Kose, from one of their other brands. This is from Sekkisei. I hope I'm saying that right. I do not speak Japanese, unfortunately. But this is the milky. This is a white milky wash. And so this, for example, is kind of like a really, really nice version. That's like a step down from this, where this is just so hydrating. And this one is just so much nicer. This is a lot lighter on my skin. This is great to me for like an everyday for my dry skin, but not making me feel like my pores are getting weighed down. And so Japanese cleansers really kind of come in all variety. And I say that because the concept of cleansing is so important, especially with all the different humidities out there and the different types of skin. For example, if you're really oily, maybe you will need something where it's like, okay, I need that really, really intense foam cleanser to really cleanse everything. But then maybe to rehydrate a little bit, you can kind of go with one of like these different versions of like a milky cleanser to kind of rehydrate your skin. If you're like me and you have dry skin, maybe something like this is already perfect because that's like the perfect amount of consistency for you. Or maybe you are even drier than I am and you need something like just so hydrating and you want something super heavy like this for your cleanser. It just kind of depends, and that's actually what I find really amazing about the Japanese cleansers, is that like Japanese cleansers by far to me have like the widest range of how deeply they will cleanse your skin, whereas in a lot of like some of the typical Korean cleansers that I've used, they will range from somewhere a little bit more drying on my skin than others, but I typically find them to be, you know, like the range is more like this, whereas Japanese skincare cleansing range is more like this, where it gets a little bit more intense. So that's just something I've observed. That's just something kind of like out of my personal preference. And that is all about cleansing as our first step. Next, we're going to talk about lotions and emulsions together, and then we'll come back to serums, because I want to talk about lotion and emulsions together because this is a concept that honestly just changed the way that I thought about skincare. So you need 3 things in your skincare routine in order to make sure that your skin is actually hydrated. You need to have humectants, which is something like hyaluronic acid, glycerin, you know, like all the really common things that we hear of for hydration. So you need humectants as number 1. You also need emollients, which is meant to soften your skin. And a lot of oils actually can also fall into this category, like facial oils, where sometimes you might hear from some people like, oh, this like facial oil like feels really nice on my skin, but it doesn't actually hydrate me. And that's actually because they might be like more of like a form of emollient instead, where it softens your skin, but not necessarily for hydration. And a great example I have of that is the Decorte face oil that I've been using. I have used 1 full bottle of this, and this is my second one, but this is a great example of a facial oil where I feel like it is meant to help soften your skin. It does not necessarily, to me, do much for actual hydration. And the first time that I tried this out, I kind of liked it, but I just felt like it wasn't like I felt any more hydrated. And then I kind of like was looking further into these things, and then I realized that this is maybe better as a form of emollient rather than for hydration. And so I repurchased it and I'm trying it again. And I do feel like when I use it with that in mind, it definitely changes my perspective, for example, on this product. So you need emollients is the second one. And the third one that you need is occlusives. And occlusives are basically found in a ton of different moisturizers. It can also be found sometimes in facial oils. They can also be found in sunscreens, but occlusives are basically just sealing everything together. That's why you might hear, for example, some people say like, yeah, I actually really like just, you know, like a layer of Vaseline on my face like right before I go to bed. That's because something like a Vaseline would be an occlusive that helps seal everything in. Having like that protective barrier, you know, across your skin to be like, okay, that's it. Nothing is escaping. Nothing is really going to penetrate it either. But for sure, all of the hydration, all of like the moisture that you added into your skin, whether naturally because you're drinking water or because you applied some kind of serum, products, or whichever beforehand, is going to kind of remain inside your skin rather than escape outwards. And so occlusives are a really great way to kind of, for example, bolster up a thinner skin barrier that is maybe struggling a little bit to actually keep all of that moisture and hydration inside your skin. So you need all three of these things to actually stay hydrated. And once I learned that, and I thought about it in comparison with Japanese skincare with lotion and emulsions, that's when I just completely had my mind changed. A lot of Japanese lotion and emulsions, for example, will come in sets like this, where you will see them be kind of almost like sold together as like a set. This is the one that I really like that's more affordable. This is from Hada Labo. This is by the brand Roto, and they have a couple different types of the lotion and emulsions. This is just the premium version that's kind of like in this gold packaging. This one is going to be like the most hydrating, and so that's why this is obviously the one that I use because I have dry skin. And so you can kind of see like from like the consistency of these that they're going to be a lot thicker, and the emulsions are basically so thick that they can basically be a lotion. And when I first started using these, I was like so fascinated by this concept because I was like, what on earth? Like, you mean to tell me that emulsions are just going to be that thick? And you can see these with a couple other types of brand products too. This is going to be one of like the lotions, and I feel like I actually maybe should have mentioned this, but Japanese toners are basically called lotions, and so you will see them advertised as lotions, and you can actually see, because everything's in Japanese, I decided to just go ahead and write it out on here with a Sharpie on the actual packaging so I do not forget what it is that I actually was purchasing. But you can kind of see like their toners, you can be very, very thin, very watery, or it can also be a lot thicker where it has like almost more of like a gel-like texture, but not quite. And so you do have a couple different varieties in the types of lotions and toners that you might get, but you will always also have something that's kind of like either called like a milky toner, milky toner, moisturizing milk is a great example, emulsions, like these are all examples where they're going to be just a lot thicker. And so let me demonstrate a couple of the ones that I have for you. This is an amazing emulsion that I have from Muji for just if you want something super, super simple. It does not have that many ingredients in it, and I think if you're a beginner to skincare, this is a kind of ingredient, this is a kind of product where you might really like. And so let's just demonstrate. For example, this is an emulsion, and this is kind of what the consistency feels like. It does almost look and feel like it could just be a regular moisturizer, maybe slightly thinner, but it is going to be almost like equally as hydrating. You also have a couple other ones that can be a little bit thicker. For example, this is the Naturie Hatomugi Skin Conditioning Milk. And so this one is going to be a little bit thicker. And so let's go a little bit further down in our skin. You can kind of see this one rubs out to be a little bit thicker than how our Muji one rubbed out to be. And so you will see, for example, different products are going to have different levels of consistencies, but they are all intended to be super, super hydrating. They're intended to be super, super thick on your skin. And honestly, just doing this right now, my forearms just feels really, really amazing. Now, when it comes to lotions or toners, basically, there's a couple different types. Some of them are going to be labeled skin conditioner. I show this as an example because, first of all, this is like a typical product that you might get, and look at how much you get. And I've used this for like months now, religiously. every day, multiple times a day. And I'm like just now getting to the bottom of this. It's like, it is honestly absolutely amazing. Some people also really actually like using this product, putting in like a spray bottle and using it to like mist their face throughout the day, which I thought was such an ingenious idea that I really just want to do myself. I want to find like a extra like mister bottle and like do this. But anyways, some Japanese toners and lotions will be classified as skin conditioners. Some of them might be classified as essences. Some of them might just purely be labeled a lotion. And so there are going to be, in my personal opinion, slightly different kind of reasons for why each of them are going to be labeled this way. But I specifically called this product a skin conditioner rather than kind of like a lotion, just to me, because I like to actually differentiate the purpose for me to using this. And I actually like to start off my routine with this because this to me is a great form of emollient where it softens my skin and it actually helps prep my skin for everything else to come. And I've learned so much about hydration and how to properly hydrate my skin, and using different ingredients and different products and different steps because of Japanese skincare, because I was like, what is a skin conditioner? I want to use that. I also have this other toner. I want to use that too. Which one do I use first? Like what does what? And as I was researching into all these things, that's kind of where I really realized, I'm like, okay, this is advertised as a skin conditioner because it's meant to help actually soften your skin. And so if you think about when someone with like really good skin, or if you feel like a baby skin where it's just so soft, and that's basically kind of what this is meant to help your skin do. It's meant to soften. And I've personally found that the best way for me to actually prep my skin to actually start accepting all the different products that I want to use afterwards is to first use an emollient. I found that all of my products with the humectants have worked a lot better when it has something to cling to, when I'm not just applying it onto my bare face, and I'm always starting off by prepping it with something like this. And so that's kind of why I say that this is the first step in my skincare routine before any of the other types of lotions, essences that I might use, whether they're going to be for anti-aging purposes, if they're for hydration. I always want to start off with something like this. Okay, so coming back around to serums. Serums are the one area where I feel like in general, Korean skincare just has so many amazing options. And if you're like looking for a very specific type of serum, if you want something, I typically tend to go more, I would say, go with Korean skincare first to maybe try out different things. However, with that being said, I have tried out some serums that I personally really like from Japanese skincare brands. Mostly they're going to be from like some of the higher end brands, for example, Decorte. So I want to talk about, for example, some of the serums that Decorte does have and kind of explain in the context of Japanese skincare, like what that kind of means in Asian skincare, what these serums mean. For example, I really love my liposome serum, and so this one I like to actually use. This is gonna sound crazy, stay with me for a second. I like to use this first in my skincare routine. I prep everything is all soft, it's all amazing, I love it, my skin's ready. And then I go in with this because this serum is designed to actually work so that it enhances the performance of every single skincare product that comes after it. That's like from their website. But I actually do feel like it does that because ever since I started using this like second in my skincare routine, I do actually feel like my skin has made like leaps and bounds of a difference, which is kind of insane. But so I would always then go in with something like this. And the next product that I would maybe go in with is one of my actual lotions, for example. I would go in with this. Then after I go in with all of my lotions, then I'll kind of like maybe jump back to some of my serums. And that's kind of what I find really amazing about some of these Japanese skincare products, is that they're so innovative and they force me to think about using them in like a different way. And I think that's just so cool. Another Decorte serum that I've recently been using, and I promise this is not sponsored, is actually this one from this is their Lift Dimension serum. And when I started using this, I actually really liked it, but it did trigger kind of like a thought question in my head of like, I wonder why in a lot of these different Japanese serums that are designed for lifting and tightening, which is, you know, all of the different words I associate with anti-aging, I wonder why all of them don't have, for example, like something stronger like retinol. It's a little bit baffling, honestly, because I'm just like, I don't see many things with retinol in it, or a lot of times I will see Japanese skincare serums be labeled as like a retinol alternative, and it was really kind of like a, I wonder what that is. And so the reason actually comes back to what we were talking about earlier with our skincare barrier, with our skin barriers as East Asians being a little bit thinner, because that basically means that our skin barriers are a little bit thinner, but the second layer, our dermis, is also a little bit thicker. And that area is responsible for all of the different collagen growth, the elasticity, keratin, you know, like all of those like other like anti-aging like hype words that you hear about, that all happens in our dermis. And what happens when you use a product like retinol or tretinoin is that it actually helps exfoliate the top layer of your skin, so help exfoliate your skin barrier and then bolster your dermis. So it just really kind of like boosts up all of the collagen productivity, the elasticity, and everything happening in the dermis. And so products of retinol and tretinoin are designed to actually do what some Asian skin are naturally a little bit more predisposition to have. But that means that unfortunately, as amazing as a product like retinol is, it doesn't actually work for a lot of Asian skins, because it's going to maybe over exfoliate you with that top layer. And so that is why a lot of these different kind of serums are going to advocate themselves as a retinol alternative, because they're not going to have that super exfoliating factor. And when I've said this to, you know, like family and friends who are also East Asian, they have kind of been like, yeah, you know, tretinoin didn't work for me. It works for like everybody else, but it didn't work for me. For example, tretinoin broke me out because my skin just did not like it. And I almost like stopped using it immediately right afterwards. And I realized it's because my skin was just getting so over exfoliated, because that was just not what my skin was meant to do. And so that is something that I learned from Japanese skincare. And so if you are looking for something that's going to help you with that kind of anti-aging, but maybe your skin is just too sensitive to be able to handle something like retinol, tretinoin, I would definitely recommend looking at very specific Asian skincare products that are meant to do that. And I have found personally a lot of amazing luck with the Japanese ones, and I just happen to currently be using the Lift Dimension from Decorte, but there's going to be so many other ones I feel like also do a really, really wonderful job of this. I will link some of them in this video for you guys if you want to try them out. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is moisturizers. And moisturizers are so interesting to me, because when I started diving deeper into Japanese skincare, that was when I found like, oh my gosh, just like how you have so many different types of cleansers, where your cleansers could be like so drying on my skin because they're meant for like really, really oily skin, or something that's like almost like way too hydrating and like way too much for your skin. I found that the same thing happens with moisturizers. This is just the one that I happen to be using. I promise I use more than like 2 or 3 brands, but this is just what I have on hand. But this is the one from Naturie. This is the Hatomugi skin conditioning gel. Hatomugi, I've recently learned, is actually an ingredient, and so the brand itself is Naturie, and so you might see a couple other brand products also advertised as Hatomugi, and that is actually why. But for example, this gel, let's just demonstrate. This is so lightweight. Let's just like take a little bit, but oh my gosh, it is so lightweight. I gifted this to a couple family members just for like a smaller size, because you know, like you never know with these things, and I feel like if you don't like it and I give you like a whole big thing, is like such a waste. but I gifted this to a couple of family members that I had a feeling would really like this for how lightweight it is, but how moisturizing it still is. And they absolutely also loved it because it just feels like nothing. It just feels like almost like nothing on your skin. And I personally really like to use this particular gel after I have put on all of my serums to be able to kind of like lock everything in initially, and then on the days where it is just, you know, maybe a little bit too hot outside, I don't want too many things weighing down my skin, I might just go with this and then go in with my sunscreen. But if I really want to, I might go in with like a thicker moisturizer, especially in the evening times. This is just the one I happen to be using. This is from Decorte. This is their Lift Dimension. And let's show you, for example, on this opposite end of the spectrum, how you could have something that is also just really thick. So if I take even just a little bit, you can kind of see this is like super thick. This is definitely something where if you have really dry skin, you could definitely use this during the day. I personally prefer to use this more at night, and maybe during the day I may just kind of like dab a little bit onto my skin, like all over, and then just kind of like gently rub it out, because it is going to be super thick. And so this is kind of what's amazing that I found about Japanese skincare, is that it's literally just like whatever you want to imagine they're going to have in terms of thickness and the consistency of it. And so it really just kind of depends on what it is that you are looking for. You can have something super thick or you can have something super thin, and brands can have this within their own ranges as well. So let me pull out my other example of my other favorite moisturizers to show you guys. Okay, I want to show you guys these two examples from Hada Labo, because these are an amazing example of how this is a product from the same line, and they're both designed to be a part of this gold line, but they have wildly different consistencies. This is the cream and this is going to be the gel, and these are going to be, one is super thick and one is super thin. And so this one, as you can see, is a gel-like consistency, whereas the cream, if I can get this open, is going to be super thick. And so that is actually what is amazing about a lot of the different Japanese skincare products, is that you can actually find a little bit of both. And the way that I really like to be able to use, for example, both of these together, is to use like the gel during the day as like a daytime moisturizer if you would prefer, and then layer it on with something thicker at night like the cream, for the extra hydration overnight. And so depending on your skin type and your routine and your lifestyle, this is kind of what I really like about the different Japanese skincare products, is that in the same line, for something that's designed to do the same thing, you can have different consistencies, and I just feel like having that option is honestly just like amazing. The last thing that I'm going to mention is sunscreens, and hopefully you guys can see these are all sunscreens, and I hold them like a baby because I love these sunscreens. Okay, let's just like dive right into this. I forgot to mention this as a separate step, but obviously SPF is like the most important thing that you should ever have. Like if you take nothing else from like a skincare routine, what you should have is a cleanser, a moisturizer, and SPF always at any given time. This is actually my favorite SPF of all time. If I had a holy grail anything, if I could choose like one holy grail product across all of my skincare products, my entire skincare routine, I would say SPF for how important it is, and I would say this one product. And unfortunately, as I've recently learned, this has been discontinued. So disappointing. I literally cannot even like get the words out of my mouth without like feeling really sad. But this is, okay, this is by the brand Roto. This is the Skin Aqua UV Super Moisture Milk. I love this so much. I gifted it to family for gifts for the holidays and stuff, because that's just how much I believed in it. I was like, everyone needs a full size of it. I'm not even gonna give you the sample size of it because I already know you're gonna love it. So I just like, I have this one that I'm like, I think I can just tell from this bottle, I'm like almost done with this bottle. And I have like one more, And then I got so many different types of other SPFs to try. Here is an example of another SPF. This is from Anessa. And this is the Perfect UV Sunscreen Skincare Milk SPF 50. So here's the thing with Asian skincare SPFs. And I say this is to be true for both Japanese and Korean skincare. There was recently a post on Reddit, I love Reddit, where they were like, is this SPF even real? These Asian SPFs I'm trying just blend into nothing. They feel like nothing. It's like I have nothing on. Can they actually truly be SPF 50? And the answer is yes. Why? Because that's just how innovative Asian skincare is. Do you see how white that was and how that just blended in? Now, granted, you have no reason to believe me that it does not leave a white cast because I'm super pale. But my husband is brown and he also uses this because I forced him to use it now that we live in Los Angeles and the sun is ridiculous. And he does not have an issue with white cast with this particular SPF either. And so this is an amazing SPF. But I say this because a lot of different Asian skincare might get some, I think undue scrutiny because it's like, well, it didn't really work out for me and it's so overhyped and people love to hate on the overhyped things. And, there was like a scandal from one of like the Korean brands that, like some of like their lab manufacturers did not live up to like code and it wasn't actually that high of an SPF. But long story short, I personally have never had an issue with Asian SPF. So many people that I know, both online, in person, that use Asian skincare sunscreens have also all raved about how amazing it is. I can personally attest to the fact that ever since I started using Asian SPF, not even just Japanese ones, even the super hyped Korean skincare brand ones, I can personally attest to how amazing they work. Now, granted, if you are like huge into water sports, you do have to be careful and you do have to look for ones that's going to be specifically water resistant because you do have to kind of keep in mind just, lifestyle preferences. For example, if you're like, oh, well, I prefer Australian sunscreen, it's probably because Australian sunscreens are designed to be super water resistant because a ton of their culture revolves around the beach, around water. And so keeping in mind just lifestyle differences, you may need to look for something more water resistant if that is you. That's something that you're really looking for. I personally have not had an issue with this one, putting it all over my face and putting it all over my body and using this for my water SPF. But granted, I do not spend that much time in the water, and so I'm not the best person to ask about it, but I found that these have worked out so well. We would go on vacation and we would be out in the sun, and I just feel like ever since we started using this, it's just one, so much easier to apply because it blends into nothing, and two, because it is so much more affordable to me comparatively. Like, I just find it to be so easy to like actually start reapplying this so much more often. And so I cannot say enough about Asian SPFs, not even just Japanese SPFs, but just Asian SPFs. But some of the products I've shown today are just the ones that have been in constant rotation in my skincare routine. And so I just feel like those are the ones I feel most comfortable speaking about, for the sole reason that these are not products that I've just used for like a day, a week, a month. Like, these are products that I've used for months. Like, if I can find it, like this product I keep mentioning because I literally have used this for months. I've used all of this and I can truly attest to how amazing it is. Same thing with some of the other products that I love to rave about. Like, it's because I've purchased and repurchased them so many times. Like all of the Hada Labo items, like I've used these religiously and they have truly, to me, changed the way that I think about skincare, because Japanese skincare is just so different and so innovative. And it kind of like forces me to like think a little bit more about like, okay, what are some of the things I'm putting in my skincare routine? Because I find that sometimes Korean skincare, with how how now everybody loves Korean skincare in the US, which I find to be an amazing thing. I do feel like sometimes Korean skincare can tend to be a little bit more westernized nowadays, maybe a little bit more familiar to Western audiences. And so when I discover something like Japanese skincare where truly it's like everything is in Japanese, there's like one word on here like premium that is in English, and it just requires me to have done so much more research, and through that I just gained such an appreciation for the innovation that happens across all of these brands, and I've gained such an appreciation for all of these different products and for the lifestyle that they fit. And honestly, I just find that to me, my skincare is like 8 out of 10 Japanese skincare now, just because I truly love it so much. And so if you are new to Asian skincare, I would definitely say do not overlook Japanese skincare. I know that Korean skincare is the one that's most talked about, and for a good reason, because I really love it, but do not overlook Japanese skincare. They're going to be just as amazing. And that is all I have to say on the topic. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you have any questions, leave them down below and I'll be more than happy to try my best to answer them, or maybe direct you to another source. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Claire, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.